1, 2. Is this on?
When we think of our favorite wrestlers, all of them have that one year where everything clicked. When they were the most popular, at the top of their game and operating at the peak of their powers. Hogan in 87, Flair in 89, Bret in 94. For this video, we're highlighting some of the industry's top names and analyzing the calendar year in which they did their best work. We'll take into account their character, popularity, storylines, feuds, and matches over the course of a 365-day span. Today, we showcase the 10 most popular versions of iconic wrestlers. We're starting with Sting in 1997. It was an odd year for the Stinger in a sense that he only wrestled 2 matches and spoke just one word the entire 12 months. But herein lies the beauty of Sting's 97.
Sting's best year's probably 1997 and he had 1 fucking match. Or 2.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Remarkable.
Just shows you what can be done if you have a great imagination. And you're committed. And disciplined. And you get lucky.
His story arc was told to perfection. He walked away from active competition the year before due to a lack of trust from his WCW peers in the battle against the dominant New World Order. Sting still popped in regularly though, measuring the trust of his former friends while having an axe to grind with the NWO. Above all, Sting's objective was clear: defeat Hollywood Hogan and bring the WCW title back to World Championship Wrestling. To do this, Sting had to change from the Surfer to the Crow. It was a complete 180 from a presentation standpoint, but it was the perfect way to bring the Sting character into the new millennium. He gradually shed his colourful persona in 96, but remained that larger-than-life superhero, just in a different way. By 97, Sting was the dark vigilante sitting in the rafters, watching over WCW and dropping down when the time called for it.
Hey! Oh, it's okay! Sting. Alright! It's Sting! Okay! It's Sting!
DDP! What a night! He's still holding him off! Oh my goodness!
He was like Batman on a rooftop, surveying Gotham City. It was a magnificent slow burn to get to the Hogan match at Starrcade in December.
Each and every week, having him drop into the building and scare people was just a blast. And it got to be to the point where the audience, I don't think they really cared if he wrestled or not. They just wanted to see what the hell he was going to do next.
It built and built to where the fans couldn't wait to finally see the clash. They'd go absolutely nuts when Sting showed up and took out members of the NWO. Again, it was like Batman taking care of all the goons before getting to the Joker. This kind of thrilling TV was what helped WCW leave WWF in the dust in the Monday Night Ratings war.
And his charisma was so huge, he didn't need to say anything. He could say more with a look than people could say in a 10-minute interview.
None of the NWO could get a leg up on Sting, so once they finally did a month before Starrcade, every fan's heart sank. For an entire year, Stinger had always fought off the New World Order, not getting laid out once, so now that they finally did beat him down, it was uncomfortable. Sting was ready to do the same by going to Starrcade and defeating Hogan for the WCW Championship. 15 months of silence and a year of not wrestling while fighting off the New World Order all came down to this. And it's true that Sting's story against the NWO had been handled perfectly up until the bell rang at Starrcade, but in wrestling, perfection isn't always perfected. The whole thing may have fallen flat at the final hurdle creatively, but at the very least we got that closing moment, with Sting celebrating the title win with all the WCW wrestlers.
To be respected as one of the 10 best of all time.
In 1998, Stone Cold Steve Austin's anti-hero rebel persona was exactly what WWF needed at the time to change the tide with WCW, leading the charge in the Monday Night War. Austin's trash-talking, ass-kicking attitude on Raw was the perfect counterpunch to the NWO on Nitro. Stone Cold as the anti-establishment fought back against Vince McMahon and the regime. It was the ultimate television battle between an unruly subordinate and a mad with power boss.
The disruptor of the status quo, the pivotal player in the complete reimagination of the industry.
After recovering from a neck injury, Steve shifted his in-ring style from a technical mechanic to a fast-paced brawler with a hard-hitting approach that became synonymous with the Attitude Era and its hot and wild main events. The Texas Rattlesnake had the fans going wild during his legendary entrance. Then they repeated all his catchphrases while he trash-talked on the microphone. With so much going on, the matches could have easily been secondary, but Austin still turned it on in the ring, working knockdown dragouts as the pay-per-view buy rates soared in 98 with Steve on top. Stone Cold set the tone at the very start of the year by getting in the face of the baddest man on the planet, Mike Tyson. This storyline, along with the build and culmination to WrestleMania 14, was enough to finally end WCW Nitro's 83-week ratings lead over Raw. This was only the beginning, as with Austin at the helm, the Federation never looked back. Wrestling was back in the mainstream, about to make more money than ever before, to which Austin was the poster boy. He was on his way to becoming the biggest box office draw in company history.
I would venture to say, money-wise, probably the top ever.
With Steve as WWF champion, the Attitude Era was officially in full swing. He took the ball and ran with it harder than any top guy before him.
Business was absolutely crazy. It didn't matter where we were, what day of the week, everything was sold out. And man, when you look in that crowd on Monday Night Raw, it was just nothing but Stone Cold Steve Austin signs, and things kept getting hotter and hotter.
Every business and TV metric skyrocketed. His rivalry with McMahon was must-see appointment viewing. There was no telling how much hell Austin could raise in any given show. Just like the common man watching on, the Rattlesnake drank beer and hated his boss. Fans lived vicariously through the bionic redneck.
I think that's part of the charm of the Austin persona, is that he identified with Americana or the blue-collar working guy no matter where he lived.
Beneath the chaos was a calculated performer who mastered the art of rebellion. He was the ultimate anti-hero, standing up to authority, defying the system, and raising hell every step of the way. All the while, Austin carried the company on his back, whether he was holding the title or chasing it. No matter how many times the McMahons tried to screw him, the Rattlesnake always fought back. In '98, his battles with Vince, Mick Foley, Kane, and The Undertaker became the stuff of legend. The WWF was cool again, and it was thanks to Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Steve Austin is the greatest, biggest star in the company. That's why we're all here and not out of business, because in part was what Steve himself accomplished.
With Stone Cold out of action for most of 2000 due to injury, The Rock stepped up and benefited in the biggest possible way.
With me gone, Rock and Triple H were having their best years. And those guys both carried the company. They both stepped up and knocked it out of the park.
He and the Rattlesnake had been WWF's A1 and A2 performers in the year prior, but now Rock was the unequivocal top guy to kick off the 21st century. The Great One's crowd reactions were incredible. His merchandise sales were off the charts. The Federation were at the peak of their powers creatively, while drawing some of their highest ever television ratings. Arenas were packed to the rafters week in, week out. Hardcore fans, casual fans, and even non-wrestling fans all wanted to see the most electrifying man in sports entertainment. Then once it was bell time, the Brahma Bull was again at the top of his game, working fast-paced, athletic contests. No matter if it was the Attitude Era brawling style or a more technical match, Rocky could go. His pay-per-view clinics with Triple H, Chris Benoit, and Kurt Angle were all outstanding. Fans were so invested with his character and matches that they threw trash from the stands when Rock had either lost or looked like he was going to lose the WWF title. On the microphone, the People's Champ had audiences creasing up, reciting his catchphrases with a level of charisma that could have easily seen Rock become president of the world. He was so beloved by everyone. In past and future eras, the top guy of the company could never get away with doing so much comedy, but The Rock was unlike any other before him or since.
He was able to capture a larger share of the mainstream audience in a way that nobody else before or likely ever will.
So much so that Hollywood took him away, since he was too entertaining for wrestling, which became apparent in the year 2000, as he began to do other things outside the ring. This was his last year working full-time in wrestling, and it was without a shadow of a doubt his best.
And he rose to the challenge, and he was the man.
At that time, I continued to ascend. I continued to do a pretty good job in terms of carrying that ball.
Rock in 2000 was right there to take the limelight, and there was no bigger star than The Rock.
Wrestling gets us right in the heart when the stories are riveting, the promos are captivating, the matches are thrilling, and the connection with the performer is emotionally endearing. Eddie Guerrero in 2004 ticks all these boxes and then some.
We needed a star, and looking at Eddie Guerrero, he was the most loved in the dressing room, and the talent wanted Eddie to be the leader. He jumped right up, he grabbed the ring and pulled it down, and then defied anybody to take it from him.
Each of his major storylines that year played out like a different movie. The family grudge with Chavo is an emotional drama. The David vs. Goliath clash versus Brock Lesnar is an underdog redemption story. The bloodbaths against JBL are akin to a violent western. And the back and forth with Kurt Angle felt like an action comedy. You can script all these stories in a feature film, but wrestling is different in how it incorporates and accentuates the real-life performer like no other form of entertainment. Few embody this fact more than Eddie Guerrero. Business may have been down in 2004, but that's not a reflection of the brilliant stories Eddie was on the forefront of on SmackDown. Physically, Guerrero was hurting, but you wouldn't have known that once he went through the curtain. He fed off the roar of the crowd, which was evident in his work that blossomed through the relationship he had with the people.
We had never had a champion like Eddie Guerrero. And Eddie was over. Eddie was he was primed for the pick, but also the only real logical choice that you would choose to be the champion.
Eddie had been through so much in his personal life. It was so special to see him finally get his flowers. He'd overcome addiction, marital issues, and being fired to at last sit atop the tree as WWE champion.
Eddie to the top rope, Eddie cheated! Yeah!
It opened doors for everybody. What Eddie did was he made a statement that night that size doesn't matter. He was the guy that started it. He started the whole, era of anything's possible. It doesn't matter how big or small you are.
Sure, wrestling is predetermined, but you cannot deny Eddie didn't earn every bit of this title victory. The storyline was as real as life itself. The content of his character, authentic, battle-scared, and redeemed.
To have overcome what he's overcome, It's amazing. That's one person whose story definitely needs to be told.
If my story can be a positive influence to one person, there's hope.
After 8 years without holding a world title, The Undertaker was back to his very best in 2007. Aged 42, he was in the shape of his career, which lent itself to great matches, as Take had his working boots on all year. Just prior to this, we often saw the Phenom paired with slower lumbering wrestlers, but now he was able to mix it up with top-level main eventers, again on a more regular basis. This meant the match quality remained consistently high, as Taker could showcase his athleticism in knockdown drag-out contests. He was also quite giving to mid-carder talent. The Phenom's matches on SmackDown with The Miz and Finlay in January and March 2007 respectively are each worth checking out. 07 also saw Taker begin his epic year saga with Shawn Michaels. They would reignite their rivalry from the 90s as the final two in the Royal Rumble, wrestling a fantastic mini singles match to close out the Rumble, which the Phenom won. Undertaker's win over Batista at WrestleMania 23 was the beginning of the spectacular series of Mania streak matches.
The thing about the match itself that was really most important to me was I really wanted to steal the show. I think Undertaker did as well.
Two big guys that aren't really thought of in the sense of maybe having the match of the night. I really enjoyed that match.
I will never stop saying that we deserve to be at the top of that card. So I wanted to prove a point. I think we did.
Both men laid it all out on the line here, and then again in brilliant rematches on pay-per-view.
They had a classic series of matches. To be able to do that and to keep their interest and to keep them coming back, you have to have phenomenal matches, and that's what they did.
Storyline-wise, this was the year Taker began his iconic program with Edge. 2007 really was the start of an incredible reinvention for the Phenom. He was the top wrestler on SmackDown this year, who consistently worked the best matches. 2008 was the year of Jeff Hardy. It started off with a major setback that could have easily knocked him back tenfold, but with the people on his side, Jeff fought his way back into the main event conversation. He'd been on the cusp already, but fans were crying out now more than ever to see Hardy as champion. No one in WWE had the unique connection he had with the audience. He wasn't just the larger-than-life superhero that wrestlers often are for fans, though it's true many of us also viewed him like this. Deep down, Jeff's bond with many people was that of a mutual understanding of those that are different from the norm. The charismatic enigma wasn't going to cut long promos or speak like other performers. He didn't need to. Fans just got Jeff. They identified with him on a deeper level. He'd made mistakes, but now it was about redemption. And what better way to achieve this than to capture the WWE title for the first time?
I think it's a time where he has to become a champion, because like all these kids that you see with the armbands on and the sleeves, like you got to reward a guy that sacrifices his body that much.
You know, I've always been confident in myself as far as being a main eventer. I think I'd been ready for a long time, you know, especially after about a year, you know.
There were many twists and turns in Jeff's storyline, but it all came down to that final push towards the championship.
In the production meeting, a lot of people did not want Jeff to be champion. So I went to Vince after everybody said no, and I showed him Jeff's merchandise sales. And I said, yo, he's selling more than anyone, by almost double. Vince looks over at Kevin Dunn, and he goes, nobody touches Jeff till Armageddon. And I knew right there, I was like, he's winning the belt. He's winning the belt. I knew it right away.
The real-life man had overcome so many obstacles and personal demons to finally reach the pinnacle moment in his career at Armageddon 08. This, like with many great moments in the history of WWE, came as a result of having blurred the lines between a superstar's fictional character and their own personal real-life drama. This fight was just as much about the human being, Jeffrey Nero Hardy, as it was about the performer, Jeff Hardy. CM Punk's 2011 was a welcome change from the rated G WWE that had plagued the previous 2 years. Punk's work expertly blurred the lines between fact and fiction, incorporating real-life issues to finally give the storylines an entire show the edge it had been lacking.
I think I struck a nerve. I've reached a new level.
His controversy, his decision to go or decision to stay really did put WWE on Front Street, but more importantly, put CM Punk on Front Street.
Punk raised his opponent's game while being at the top of his, but to get to this point, Punk had to cut the promo of his career amidst the legal contract dispute with the company while being creatively disgruntled.
Sometimes you have to play the hand you're dealt. He said, no, I don't.
He was ready to leave unless they gave him the ball. Enough was enough, and it was time for a change. The famous pipe bomb and the storyline that followed it was what finally put Punk at the top of the card in WWE. The powers that be were so out of touch at the time, they thought this was going to be a massive heel promo. On the contrary, the segment turned Punk into a top babyface, the true fans' choice, but not the company's. The pipe bomb set off a viral explosion online, as the summer of Punk saw jaded fans tuning back in to see what all the fuss was about.
The moment where you go like, there it is. It's like the Austin 316 thing or whatever. Oh, there's the moment.
it was a launching pad.
The Second City Saint channeled years of creative frustration into his work to create a level of reality storytelling that had been seen before, but not to this level. This was a battle with the actual regime. True to form, the company almost screwed it up creatively after greatness landed on their lap, but these roadblocks only reaffirmed Punk's mission statement. Punk was the man, and this wasn't going to change. He, however, was going to change the WWE in more ways than one.
He's a top guy, he's a marquee guy, but not just to the world, not just to the fans, not just on the marquee. He's a leader in the locker room now. He's respected, he leads by example.
CM Punk in 2011 would ultimately set the table for Daniel Bryan in 2013. Bryan's road to the top in WWE really kicked into gear after being beat in 18 seconds in the opener at WrestleMania 28. Then coming out of Mania the next year, Bryan's name and his iconic catchphrase was on every fan's lips. And while this should have been as simple as going with the hot act, WWE did everything in their power to ignore the fan response.
You can't fight the biggest superstar in the WWE, and that's the WWE Universe.
This type of thing happened to mid-carders on a regular basis in this era until they were ultimately killed off. However, Bryan was already a star, plus his popularity was so overwhelming, the pitchforks were out for WWE, not just from the fans, but also industry legends. In fact, pretty much everyone could see that Bryan was the guy, except for Vince McMahon. McMahon's refusal to go with Daniel saw shows and segments get hijacked. Bryan wasn't the only one fighting against the quote-unquote authority. The fans were essentially in a feud with the company. 2013 was truly a turning point in the fans' relationship with WWE. There were a few nearly moments where Bryan would be given the belt only to have it taken away. Soon it became clear that the company was going to go with Batista vs Orton in the WrestleMania 30 main event. God knows how poorly that match would have been received. Thankfully, Bryan's popularity never wavered. It only intensified in the midst of WWE's backward booking. That's the beauty of this story, in that it showcased the true power of the fans. We all know how great Bryan was before, but once he got over organically with the audience, they were never gonna let him go. It didn't matter if WWE didn't think he was marketable, because even in the scripted world of wrestling, when the fans feel so strongly about someone they love like Bryan, that's when it all becomes real.
Anybody that was involved in that, for Randy and Dave, for me, that's what you are in this business for, in moments like that. It was this magical story arc that took us all the way to the end. It was a celebratory opera, and the conductor was standing with the title that symbolized we all did this together.
That was a sort of emotion you can't manufacture.
I was the guy who wasn't supposed to be there. I sneaked my way in because the fans wouldn't accept anything else. Fear just overwhelm you, and that's what I tried to allow happen.
He's trying to talk, they won't let him.
Cheating a bit for our penultimate entry, as when looking at Roman Reigns' best year, we have to cover the 12 months from WrestleMania 38 in 2022 and 39 in 23. This was the stretch of time where the Bloodline story was at its best. Sami Zayn stole many of the scenes he was in, while seeking the approval of Jey Uso, and most importantly Roman. We got a glimpse of Reigns' lighter side, something we hadn't seen since he'd been a heel. However, deep down he was still that ruthless chief that could strike down upon anyone with his Superman fist. Sure, Jey, Sami and Paul Heyman got plenty of exposure, but only because Roman allowed it per the storyline. They were integral pieces to the puzzle, but at the end of the day, the story was such that it was all about the tribal chief. No one could step out of line, they just had to fall in line or face Roman's wrath. Once it was time to get serious, Reigns would put them in check. Everything they did was to serve him as the head of the table, an ultimate leader of his family. In the ring, Roman was still dominant as ever. His final match with Brock Lesnar was one of their best clashes to date, as Reigns finally banished the Beast from the title picture. Then entertaining programs with Drew McIntyre, Logan Paul and Kevin Owens made for great TV. A regime change meant WWE were firing on all cylinders for the first time in well over a decade. Roman was at the forefront of all of this amidst a 2-year title reign that would ultimately turn into 4 years. Reigns' previous babyface run was like the Ringmaster or Rocky Maivia, compared to him as the villainous tribal chief. Roman's subsequent rivalries with Sami Zayn and Cody Rhodes were among the greatest of the modern era. Yes, Reigns was up against 2 of the company's top babyfaces, but he'd done such a great job as a heel, fans really wanted to see him lose the belt to one of their favorites. In saying that, Roman was a break from the mold in many respects. He was the dominant #1 guy in the promotion who few could touch, but had done so as a heel, as opposed to a traditional top babyface. Reigns was disliked enough for fans to want one of their heroes to dethrone him, but the people also respected how Roman had taken WWE out of a creative slump. He carried the ball as a bad guy while the company took their time getting a top babyface, strong enough to knock the tribal chief off his perch. All the while, business metrics soared, while Reigns moved the most merch and sold the most tickets.
I just really feel like this is what I'm hoping, hands down, the best work I've ever done.
When he finally
he got the opportunity to speak his mind, explore different parts of his personality, and project those onto the screen, it became the most organic version of Roman Reigns that we've ever gotten in WWE.
The WWE fans were like, this is what we've been waiting for.
Brother, you put all the pieces together. It's amazing. Beautiful picture. You really arrived, and I'm so proud of you.
But eventually, every big dog has his day. In 2024, Cody Rhodes was the one to finally take down Roman. Even after the heartache 1 year previous, it still wasn't a clear-cut path to the title. In 2023, Rhodes acted as the uncrowned top guy. He wasn't in the championship picture after losing to Reigns, but Cody was still the #1 babyface. Now in 24, the American Nightmare was going to put it all together and at last finish the story. Winning the Royal Rumble for the 2nd year in a row had some thinking it would be a clear path to the end, but TKO buying WWE and putting The Rock on the board threw a major spanner in the works. Rock wanted to have that big WrestleMania main event match with his cousin Roman, something that had been teased for years and even planned at one point. However, with Rhodes being so undeniable with the audience, fans fought back against Rock inserting himself into Cody's match. The backlash turned the Great One into the heel final boss who aligned with Reigns to torment Rhodes every step of the way. It made for an unplanned, breathtaking story that produced one of the most thrilling WrestleMania builds ever. All the twists and turns only endeared Cody more to the people. Plus, it made for such a tremendous finish to his story. He still got that fairy tale ending, but the final stretch was like the third act of a Hollywood action movie come to life. As one story finished, another began. Wrestling never stops, and now as champion, Cody was the quarterback. The biggest and most popular babyface since John Cena in terms of business. Cody's title run saw him headline big international shows in epic matches against AJ Styles, Kevin Owens, and Gunther. It was truly the run of Rhodes' career and a throwback to the days of the workhorse champion who puts the promotion on his back. A clean-cut babyface of this kind hadn't worked for a while, but the American Nightmare proved you just need the right guy in the role.
I don't know how long it's gonna last. Business is the hottest it's ever been. I hope I've lived up to the challenge. I'm of the thought that it could end tomorrow. And if it did, I would like to make sure that everyone who paid to see us, or specifically to see me, I got them. It's not for me. They put their time in to come here, and I love doing it, and I won't change.
Now, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out our similar video on 10 WWE wrestlers who were paid to sit at home. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.